What if everything you believed about faith was a meticulously crafted lie? What if the sacred ground you thought protected you was actually a hunting ground, and the shepherd you trusted was the most dangerous wolf? Imagine a sanctuary where hope isn't just preached, it's weaponized, where prayers don't rise to heaven, but sink into something darker. Every Sunday, thousands of souls gather, believing they're seeking salvation. But what if I told you they were walking into a trap so elaborate, so sinister, that the very walls of the church were breathing with malevolent intent? Close your eyes, feel the cold stone of the church steps, hear the organ's haunting melody, smell the mix of incense and something else, something metallic, something that whispers of secrets buried so deep, their revelation could destroy entire lives. This isn't just a story about betrayal. This is a descent into a nightmare where faith becomes the most perfect disguise for the most perfect crime. And trust me, you're not ready for what comes next. Some secrets aren't meant to be discovered. Some truths are so brutal, they'll make you question the very foundation of faith. The Living Waters Church wasn't just a building. It was a living, breathing organism of deception, its walls whispering secrets that would make your skin crawl. Promise Hills knew it as a beacon, but I knew it as a predator. My name is Grace, and this is the story they never wanted you to hear. The first time I walked into those hallowed halls, the marble floors gleamed like polished bones, and the air felt thick with unspoken promises. Pastor Emmanuel stood at the pulpit, a titan of charisma, his voice a velvet knife that could slice through doubt and stitch hope back together. I was broken then, fragmented, the kind of broken where silence feels louder than any sermon. And Pastor Emmanuel, he saw me, really saw me, but predators always know exactly how to choose their prey. The weeks blended into months, like watercolors bleeding into each other, each day a subtle transformation I barely noticed. The Living Waters Church had become more than a building to me. It was my sanctuary, my lifeline, my only connection to hope when my world had crumbled into dust. But sanctuaries are tricky things. They invite you in with promises of safety, then slowly reveal their teeth. The first crack appeared so subtly that I almost missed it. A folder, carelessly left open on Pastor Emmanuel's mahogany desk. My fingers trembled as I touched the edges of the documents. Financial records that made my stomach churn and twist like a live wire. Glossy photographs of church members stared back at me, their faces of vulnerability now looking like meticulously mapped targets in a game I didn't yet understand. I remember the exact moment I decided to confront Minister Jacob. The church hallway smelled of old hymnals and wood polish, that familiar churchy scent that had once brought me comfort. Now it felt suffocating. "Minister Jacob," I called, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the hurricane brewing inside me. He turned, his eyes, usually warm during sermons, now cold as winter stones. "Grace," he said, my name falling from his lips like a dismissal. "These records," I began, pulling out the folder. "The financial transactions, the way they're documented. It doesn't make sense." A laugh escaped him. Not a warm laugh, not a human laugh. It was a sound that felt like ice sliding down my spine, sharp and calculated. "Come with me," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. Each word was a razor blade. "You need to understand something." The church corridors seemed to elongate, shadows stretching like hungry fingers. We descended a staircase I'd never noticed before, each step creaking with decades of hidden secrets. "The church doesn't run on prayers," Jacob murmured, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "It runs on something far darker." And then the basement. Oh, the basement. Candles flickered like trapped souls, their flames dancing with a life of their own. Not the gentle movement of ordinary candlelight, but a frantic, almost sentient motion. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of old wax, burnt herbs, and something metallic that might have been blood. Ministers stood in a circle, their robes no longer resembling holy vestments, but something primordial, something ancient. They chanted in a language that predated sound itself, syllables that seemed to vibrate through my bones, making my teeth ache. Stone walls were covered in symbols that seemed to pulse, to breathe, not painted, etched, as if carved by hands that knew true darkness. Pastor Emmanuel stood at the center. Gone was the charismatic preacher who could make hundreds weep with a single sermon. This was something else, a figure of terrifying, concentrated power. "Who sent you?" Pastor Emmanuel's voice cut through the silence like a blade, each word measured and deadly. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as desert sand. "No one," I whispered, then found a sliver of courage. "I came of my own will." Minister Jacob stepped forward, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the stone floor. "Of your own will? Nothing happens in this church by accident, Grace." "What are you doing down here?" Pastor Emmanuel demanded, his eyes boring into me with an intensity that felt like physical weight. I clutched the folder of documents in my trembling hands. The financial records, the photographs, the transactions. They don't make sense. A cold laugh erupted from Jacob. "Sense? You think the work of God makes sense to someone like you?" "This isn't God's work," I shot back, surprised by the sudden steel in my voice. Pastor Emmanuel took a step closer. The candlelight fractured across his face, making his features look like a mask carved from stone. "You understand nothing about the sacrifices required to build something greater than yourself." "Sacrifices?" I challenged, my voice shaking but defiant. "You mean exploitation, manipulation?" "Survival," he corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Every empire requires blood. Every transformation demands a price." Minister Jacob circled me slowly, like a predator sizing up its prey. "You've seen too much, little lamb. And in this church, curiosity has always been a dangerous thing." "I'm not afraid of you," I said, though my body betrayed me. Trembling, cold sweat forming on my forehead. Pastor Emmanuel's smile was a knife's edge. "Fear isn't a choice. It's a revelation." The ministers began to close in, their movements synchronized, calculated. The basement seemed to grow smaller, the walls pressing closer. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Ensure," Pastor Emmanuel said slowly, deliberately, "that some secrets never see the light of day." Fear surged through me as I ran, my worn leather sandals slapping against the dusty ground. The red earth of Promise Hills seemed to whisper warnings with each step. I didn't stop until I reached my small compound, my heart thundering like ancestral drums. Even within the safety of my home, with its mud brick walls adorned with traditional woven baskets and family photographs, I felt exposed. The spirits of my ancestors seemed to watch, urging me to speak the truth. The next morning, I sought out Kwame Mensah, a local journalist known for his fearless reporting in our community. We met under the large baobab tree at the town's center, a place where secrets and stories have always been shared. "These are dangerous waters," Kwame warned, his voice low. In our culture, challenging powerful church leaders was like challenging a traditional chief. It could cost everything. As our investigation progressed, the signs of resistance grew. my mobile phone, constantly interrupted by strange static that reminded me of whispered ancestral warnings. Unfamiliar vehicles, their dust trails visible from miles away, would park near my family's compound. Then came the unthinkable. Kwame's car was found at the bottom of a local ravine. The local police, many of whom were church members, called it an accident. But in our community, we know there are no accidents, only stories waiting to be revealed. I went into hiding, but not before ensuring our evidence would survive. Copies of documents mailed to news outlets, anonymous tips sent to law enforcement. Our story would not be silenced. Weeks later, the truth erupted like a long-contained fire. The Living Waters Church, once the pride of Promise Hills, stood empty. Its grand architecture now a monument to betrayal. The stained glass windows that once caught the morning light now looked like fractured memories. From my hidden refuge, I watched as our community began to heal. People came forward with stories of exploitation, of spiritual manipulation that had gone unchallenged for years. The church's congregation dwindled, replaced by a collective awakening. "Judgment begins in the house of God," I whispered, words that carried the weight of our ancestral wisdom. My story became more than personal revenge. It became a beacon of hope, a reminder that true faith is not about grand buildings or charismatic leaders, but about community, truth, and genuine compassion. I found peace in a small, humble congregation, one that understood our traditional values of Ubuntu. I am because we are. A place where spirituality meant lifting each other up, not tearing down. To those who listen, be careful where you place your trust. Not every church is a sanctuary, and not every pastor is a true shepherd. Sometimes, the most dangerous predators wear the most beautiful robes. In our culture, we have a saying, "The truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away."